Welcome to our channel. In today's thrilling episode of the Abyssal Rescuers, saving Nereus from the depths, we've reached a pivotal moment in the story. As Mike and Lydia struggle to escape the collapsing research station, they are faced with their greatest challenge yet, a final showdown with the rogue Praxian faction. But as the fight reaches its peak, the true power of the gravitational anomalies is revealed, leading to an unexpected twist that will leave you at the edge of your seat. The sirens wailed as the rescue operation began. Michael Dawson stood on the edge of the launch pad, looking out at the massive black ocean that stretched endlessly beneath the harsh gravity of Nereus. This was not just a mission to rescue people, it was a test of his limits. The gravity on this planet was almost 7 times that of Earth's, and every step felt like moving through thick sludge, every breath heavier, every movement more deliberate. Mike had been trained for environments like this, not for the creatures lurking in the depths, but for the planets themselves. The entire mission was high risk, but the stakes were even higher than he had anticipated. The research station at the heart of Nereus's ocean had gone silent, and now Mike's team was called upon to bring back any survivors and gather as much intel as possible. In his comm unit, Dr. Lydia's voice crackled through. "Mike, we've been tracking the creatures' movements. They've changed. I don't think we're dealing with mere predators anymore." Mike's brow furrowed. He'd heard about these creatures, gargantuan marine beings that roam the deep waters of Nereus. He'd been briefed that they were aggressive but manageable. However, the way Lydia spoke made him realize this was no ordinary situation. "Understood," Mike replied, his voice steady. "I'm on my way in. Prepare for a rough ride." He stepped into the specially designed dive suit, the thick exoskeleton designed to shield him from the crushing gravity. It felt tight around his body as the suit activated the artificial compensators. He glanced at the technician standing by, nodding once before boarding the shuttle. "Lift off in 5, the tech said. The engines roared to life, and the shuttle shot upward into the atmosphere, breaking through the thick clouds. As the shuttle ascended, Mike's thoughts drifted briefly to the survivors below, their fate uncertain. In his mind, he prepared for the worst. As they reached the coordinates, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into a trap. Nereus had been peaceful until the anomalies began. He'd heard rumors of those behind the gravity disturbances, but those were just whispers. Nothing concrete. "Approaching drop zone," the pilot announced. Mike gritted his teeth. The drop would be dangerous, but it was the only way in. The research facility was positioned on the seabed, deep beneath the planet's violent surface. He would have to move fast. He would have to save them all. As Mike prepared for the drop, his hands ran over the straps of his seatbelt, securing himself in the shuttle. The thrusters powered up, and the hum of the engines vibrated beneath him. Through the small viewport, Nereus's surface appeared far below, a roiling mass of turbulent seas, swirling violently as if the planet itself were alive. "5 minutes to drop zone," the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Mike didn't respond. He had been in worse situations, but something about this mission felt different. The weight of it pressed down on him, not just the physical force of the planet's crushing gravity, but the responsibility of those who relied on him to save them. He could see the research station now, a massive underwater complex suspended on the edge of the deepest ocean trench. It was already listing to one side, parts of it consumed by enormous waves of pressure and shifting tectonic plates beneath the seabed. The once pristine facility now looked like a wounded beast, its metal skin warped and groaning under the immense weight. "Approaching atmospheric entry," the pilot said, cutting through Mike's thoughts. The shuttle jolted as it plunged into the atmosphere of Nereus. The exterior hull heated up as it sliced through the dense layers of kicking, the air around them shaking with the increasing pressure. Mike gripped the sides of his seat, bracing himself for the imminent plunge into the depths of the ocean. His mission was simple: get to the station, find any survivors, extract them, and get out before the entire facility crumbled beneath them. But things were never that simple. His mind kept racing back to Lydia's warning. The creatures have changed. What did that mean? Was it possible that the creatures had evolved due to the anomalies they had been studying? Could they be connected to the disturbances? A sudden shake snapped Mike from his thoughts, and the shuttle lurched as it broke through the atmosphere, descending toward the surface. He activated the navigation on his visor, linking it to the shuttle's flight systems. The display showed the coordinates of the station, He was closing in. With a final jolt, the shuttle hit the surface of Nereus's ocean. The shockwave of impact reverberated through the shuttle's hull, but the reinforced structure held steady. Mike didn't waste time. The emergency lights inside blinked on, and the hatch automatically opened with a loud hiss. "Let's go," Mike said, his voice a low growl as he unbuckled himself from the seat. He stood and grabbed the modified exosuit, adjusting the pressure and weight settings on his arm devices. The suit's compensators activated, making his movements slightly more fluid, but he still felt the weight of Nereus's gravity pressing down on him. The shuttle door opened, and he stepped onto the surface of the ocean. Beneath his feet, the metallic floor felt strangely soft, sinking into the murky water. He activated his jet boots to hover slightly above the ocean floor, feeling the familiar weight pressing against his body. Nereus was beautiful in its own chaotic way. Towering dark waves clashed against the station's structures, creating ripples that echoed through the deep waters. In the distance, Mike could see the faint outline of the research station, silhouetted against the glowing currents of bioluminescent sea life that flitted through the waters like glowing specks of stardust. A series of alarms blared in his suit, and a voice crackled through his comm. "Mike, we're tracking increased activity from the creatures. They're coming closer." "Understood," Mike replied, glancing back at the shuttle. "I'll handle it." He adjusted his comms to the station frequency. "This is Mike Dawson, Earth Navy. I'm approaching the station. If anyone is there, respond immediately." Static was his only answer. He pushed forward, each step heavier than the last. He was only a few hundred meters from the facility now, but it felt like miles under the crushing pressure. As he neared the station, the dark waters grew even murkier. His visor lit up, giving him enhanced sight. But even with the advanced technology, he could only see so far through the shadows of the deep ocean. The current was picking up, making it harder to maintain his bearings. Suddenly, something massive stirred beneath him. A tremor shook the ocean floor, and Mike felt it through his boots. A deep, unnatural rumble. His hand instinctively reached for his weapon, an energy pulse rifle attached to his side. The water around him shifted as something colossal emerged from the darkness. A deep growl echoed through his comm system. The creature was coming. Through the swirling water, Mike saw the outline of the creature. It was like nothing he had ever seen. Its body was long and sinuous, with enormous translucent fins that undulated like wings in the deep. Its eyes glowed with an eerie green hue, and its massive jaws opened with a hiss, revealing rows of sharp teeth designed to tear through anything in its path. It charged. Mike's instincts kicked in. He fired a pulse shot into the water, hoping to disrupt the creature's charge. The energy bolt lit up the water momentarily, and the creature recoiled, its screech echoing through the depths. But it wasn't enough. The creature wasn't deterred. It moved with incredible speed, closing the gap between them faster than he could react. Mike dived to the side, narrowly dodging the creature's snapping jaws. He shot another blast into the water, this time aimed directly at the creature's exposed gills. The water lit up again, and the creature let out a terrifying roar. But it was still coming. Mike had to think fast. He switched his rifle to a more concentrated setting and fired a direct hit at the creature's face. The pulse shot hit its eye, and the beast jerked back, screeching in pain before it disappeared into the murky depths, leaving only the faintest ripple in its wake. Breathing heavily, Mike stood, his suit's compensators buzzing with the effort. He glanced at the research station again. He had no time to waste. The station's entrance was damaged, the massive steel door twisted and half submerged in water. Mike managed to pry it open with his suit's enhanced strength, the hinges protesting under the strain. The interior was dim, only lit by emergency lights that flickered weakly as he moved through the flooded corridors. The walls were cracked, and debris floated in the water. The station was in shambles, but it was still standing. For now. "Hello?" Mike called again, his voice echoing through the dark halls. There was no immediate response, but a faint beeping from his wrist console signaled a nearby life sign. He followed the signal, moving deeper into the heart of the station. He found them in a collapsed research lab. Dr. Lydia, Dr. Aiden, and Eloise, huddled together, their exosuits damaged, but still functional. "We thought we were the only ones left," Lydia said, her voice shaking as she glanced up at Mike. I didn't think anyone could survive out there." Mike offered a tired grin. "I've survived worse. Now let's get you out of here." As they gathered their supplies, Mike couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. The creatures were still out there, and now it seemed like the real battle was just beginning. Mike stood at the entrance to the ruined lab, staring at the survivors. Lydia, Dr. Aiden, and Eloise had been hiding out in this submerged section of the station for what seemed like days, the tension in their eyes betraying the dire situation. "We need to move," Mike said firmly, his voice cutting through the unease. "This place won't hold much longer." Lydia nodded, wiping the exhaustion from her face. Her scientific curiosity still burned behind her eyes, despite the obvious fear she carried. "We've been monitoring the creatures, Mike," she said. "Something's wrong. They're acting in a way we've never seen before. And it's not just aggression. They're changing." "What do you mean?" Mike asked, his brow furrowing as he activated his wrist console to monitor their situation. Lydia glanced at Aiden, who nodded reluctantly. "We think the creature's behavior is tied to a gravitational anomaly we've been studying. Our research into gravitational manipulation, well, we thought it could help stabilize the gravity on Nereus. But it seems like something else is going on." "A weapon," Aiden interjected grimly, his voice low. "They've weaponized the gravity anomalies, Mike. The creatures are being used as tools to destabilize the planet. It's not natural. Someone is controlling them." Mike's eyes hardened. This mission had just turned far more complicated than a simple rescue. Lydia stepped forward, her voice urgent. "The creatures are evolving. Their anatomy is shifting. They're adapting to the gravity anomalies faster than we predicted. If we don't stop this, we could be facing an army of super predators that could wipe out everything." "Who would want to do that?" Mike asked, though he already had an inkling. There were only so many factions capable of such an act. Lydia hesitated, her expression tight. "The rogue Praxian faction, the ones we've been monitoring. They've been sabotaging our research for months, trying to force us off the planet. They want to control the mining rights, Mike. They'll stop at nothing." "We need to stop them," Mike muttered, his hand tightening around his pulse rifle. "Where do we start?" Aiden looked at him, his face grim. "The control room. We need to access the main system and deactivate the gravitational amplifiers. We have a prototype device we've been working on, but it's only a prototype." Lydia added, "It can neutralize the amplified gravity fields, but we need to get to the control room before the rogue faction destroys it. They're probably on their way right now." Mike nodded. "Then let's go." The group made their way through the ruined hallways, the sounds of the ocean's violent currents outside the station muffling everything. The pressure of Nereus's gravity seemed to amplify with each passing moment, the air thick and heavy, as if the planet itself was pushing down on them. Mike led the way, his senses sharp. His suit's compensators were holding up, but he could feel the strain in his body. The gravity here wasn't just a physical force, it was a presence, something that gripped him with an unrelenting force, threatening to break him if he wasn't careful. "Stay close," he ordered, his voice firm. "Watch each other's backs." They moved quickly through the station's darkened corridors, their footsteps echoing on the cold metallic floor. As they approached the central hub of the station, Mike couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The deep, low hum of machinery was the only sound, punctuated by the occasional groan of the station's collapsing structure. Suddenly, a sharp screech pierced the silence. A massive shadow loomed in the water, moving with terrifying speed. A creature, larger than any they had encountered before, appeared from the depths. It was unlike the others. Its body was covered in thick armored scales, and its glowing eyes radiated a sinister intelligence. The creature lunged toward them, its jaws snapping with deadly precision. Mike was already moving before the others could react. He fired a pulse shot, but it ricocheted off the creature's thick armor. The beast hissed, unfazed by the attack. "Get to cover," Mike shouted, diving to the side as the creature lunged at the group. Lydia pulled Eloise behind a nearby pillar, while Aiden attempted to fire his weapon. But the creature was too fast, and its tail slammed into the wall with a deafening crack, sending debris flying. Mike's mind raced. This wasn't just any predator. It was smarter than the others. It was hunting them. "Lydia," Mike yelled over the chaos. "We need that device, now." Lydia nodded, her face set in determination. She quickly pulled a small device from her pack, a prototype gravitational pulse generator. The device was crude, untested, but it was their only hope. Get ready, Lydia shouted, activating the device. The creature hissed as a wave of gravitational force rippled through the station, pushing the creature back. It staggered, but it wasn't defeated. Get to the control room now, Mike ordered, sprinting toward the entrance to the heart of the station. The group ran, the creature hot on their heels. The station shook with each step of the predator, the walls groaning as if they too were being crushed by the relentless gravity. They reached the control room door, but it was locked. Mike didn't hesitate. He grabbed a nearby tool and hacked into the system, forcing the door open just as the creature slammed into the wall behind them, its jaws snapping shut inches from Aiden's leg. Inside, the room was dimly lit, but the control panels flickered with life. Lydia moved to the main terminal, plugging the prototype into the central system. "We've got one shot at this," Lydia said, her voice tense. "If this doesn't work, we're dead." Mike stood guard by the door, his rifle ready. The creature was still outside, circling, waiting for an opening. Lydia's fingers flew over the terminal, her face set in intense concentration. "Almost there. Just need to bypass the security protocols." A loud crash interrupted her. The creature had found its way inside. Without warning, it lunged at them, but before it could reach them, Lydia activated the device. A powerful gravitational pulse erupted from the prototype, flooding the room with an intense wave of force. The creature screeched in pain, its body writhing in agony as the gravitational field altered its senses, forcing it to the ground. The pressure intensified, and for a moment the station seemed to hold its breath. Mike and the others watched in stunned silence as the creature collapsed, its body twitching before it lay still. Lydia exhaled in relief. "It worked," she whispered. "For now." But the victory was short-lived. The alarms in the control room began blaring. Another surge of gravitational instability shook the station. This was only the beginning. As the gravitational anomalies intensified, the station's structure began to collapse around them. The emergency lights flickered, and the walls groaned under the immense pressure. The rogue Praxian faction was closing in, and they would stop at nothing to silence the research and take control of the planet. "Mike!" Lydia shouted over the growing chaos. "We need to send the signal now. The device is only temporary. We need to warn Earth." Mike nodded, already moving toward the communications panel. His pulse rifle was ready, and he could feel the pressure mounting. They had no more time to waste. The Praxians would arrive any minute, and their reinforcements would be just as deadly as the creatures they had created. A loud crash came from behind them, and a group of heavily armed Praxian soldiers stormed into the control room. Their exosuits were built for Nereus's gravity, their weapons glowing with lethal energy. "You're too late," Mike said coldly, raising his rifle. "The planet's defense system is online." The Praxian leader, a hulking figure with dark, scaled armor, sneered. "You think you can stop us? You've played into our hands. The creatures are just the beginning. Once we have control of the gravity, Nereus will be ours." Lydia stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear. "You won't control anything. This planet is more than just resources. It's a living ecosystem, and we're going to protect it." The tension in the room was palpable as the Praxian soldiers advanced. Mike took a deep breath. He wasn't going to let them win. "Get to the transmitter," Mike ordered, his finger tight on the trigger. "I'll cover you." The final battle was about to begin. The Praxian soldiers entered the control room with deadly intent. Their hulking exosuits, designed for Nereus's extreme gravity, made them towering figures, each one armed with pulse cannons that crackled with lethal energy. The air was thick with the smell of ozone as their weapons powered up. Mike's pulse rifle hummed with readiness as he aimed it steadily at the advancing soldiers. "Stay behind me," Mike shouted to Lydia, Aiden, and Eloise, who had scrambled behind the nearest consoles for cover. His muscles strained against the pressure of the gravity, but his modified body was holding up, just barely. His bones felt like they were beginning to crack under the strain, but he couldn't stop now. Not when they were so close. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," the Praxian leader growled, his voice amplified by his exosuit. His eyes glowed ominously behind his helmet, a dark green light that seemed to pulse with every step. "We'll stop you, Drevin," Mike growled. "You're not taking this planet." The Praxian leader, Drevin, chuckled. "You think you can stop us? We've already destabilized the core systems. Once we capture you and your research, there will be nothing left to save. Mike's heart pounded in his chest, but he didn't hesitate. Lydia, send the signal now. I'll hold them off. Lydia looked at him, her face a mixture of fear and determination. I can't guarantee it'll work. There's too much interference. The planet's destabilizing too fast. Do it anyway, Mike said through clenched teeth. We don't have a choice. Lydia nodded quickly, moving toward the transmitter panel. She pulled out a data crystal, inserting it into the central terminal. The moment the crystal slid into place, the alarms in the room blared. The countdown began, and the control room lit up with a flashing red light. Drevin growled in frustration. Activate the disruptors, he roared. His soldiers aimed their weapons, the crackling of energy growing louder as they prepared to fire. The air snapped as their weapons discharged in unison. Mike dove to the side, narrowly avoiding a pulse blast that tore through the wall behind him. He retaliated instantly, sending a flurry of pole shots toward the soldiers. The room shook with the sheer power of the blasts, but the Praxian soldiers' advanced exosuits absorbed most of the damage. Aiden fired his own weapon, a grenade launcher, and the explosion rocked the station. A Praxian soldier's exosuit exploded in a burst of sparks, sending the soldier flying across the room. But it wasn't enough. More soldiers poured in, surrounding the group, forcing them into a corner. Mike, the signal, Lydia shouted. It's almost there. We need to buy more time. Mike's heart raced. He could feel the pressure building as the gravity continued to distort around them. The Praxians were closing in fast, and with each passing second, the room seemed to get heavier. Cover me, okay! Mike shouted to Aiden and Eloise. He charged forward, dodging another energy blast, and slammed his shoulder into a nearby Praxian soldier. The collision sent them both tumbling to the floor, but Mike wasn't done yet. He grabbed the soldier's pulse cannon and fired it point blank, sending another Praxian soldier flying. The Praxian leader, Drevin, wasn't going to let this end easily. He raised his weapon, aiming directly at Mike, but just as he pulled the trigger, a massive tremor shook the station. The entire facility groaned under the immense pressure. Now, Lydia screamed. Mike didn't waste a second. He dove behind a console, narrowly avoiding another blast as the gravitational field shifted again, this time with a violent lurch that sent all of them sprawling to the floor. The signal had gone out. The air was thick with tension as Drevin's soldiers staggered, momentarily disoriented by the sudden shift in gravity. Their suits struggled to adjust, their weapons faltering in the unstable field. Mike seized the opportunity. He charged forward, taking advantage of the disarray, his pulse rifle blazing. The first soldier crumpled under the force of his shot, but Drevin wasn't about to let his forces go down easily. The Praxian leader turned his weapon on Mike, but at the last moment, Aiden leaped in front of Mike, taking the full brunt of the blast. No, Lydia screamed, rushing toward Aiden's fallen form. Mike's blood boiled with rage as he whipped around, aiming his pulse rifle at Drevin. The Praxian leader stood unfazed, his suit's advanced shielding barely showing signs of damage. You really think you can stop me, human? Drevin sneered. He stepped closer, his massive exosuit stomping the ground with each step. Mike's breath came in ragged gasps. His muscles screamed from the pressure, but he couldn't let Drevin win. Not when they were so close. I don't think I know, Mike snarled. He ducked behind a pillar as another energy blast ripped through the air, but this time he was prepared. He triggered the emergency overload on his pulse rifle, the weapon's power spiking as it charged up for one last shot. The blast that followed was unlike anything Mike had ever seen. It hit Drevin square in the chest, sending a wave of energy rippling through the Praxian leader's exosuit. Sparks flew, and for a moment Drevin staggered, his suit malfunctioning. Mike's heart hammered in his chest as he took another step forward. But Drevin wasn't finished yet. With a roar of fury, he slammed his massive fists into the control panel, sending a shockwave through the room. The walls buckled under the strain, and the whole station shook violently. This ends now, Drevin shouted. Mike dove to the side as the Praxian leader unleashed one final devastating blast, but it missed. The blast ricocheted off the station's hull, causing a chain reaction that tore through the station's core systems. Get out! Lydia screamed, pulling Aiden's injured body toward the escape tunnel. Mike turned to follow, but Drevin blocked his path. The Praxian leader, his suit sparking with malfunction, grinned. "I'll take you down with me," Drevin growled. Mike's eye gaze locked onto Drevin's, and in that moment, he knew what had to be done. With a final desperate sprint, he hurled himself into Drevin, using the momentum of the station's collapsing structure to knock the Praxian off balance. They both fell to the ground, the floor cracking beneath them. With the last of his strength, Mike grabbed Drevin's weapon, twisting it from his hand. He fired the weapon point blank at the Praxian leader, sending him sprawling backward, the energy blasts shredding through his suit. Drevin's last breath escaped in a hiss as the control room began to implode. The facility's core was collapsing, and everything around them was disintegrating into chaos. Mike scrambled to his feet, his vision swimming from the pressure, but he didn't stop. He grabbed Lydia's arm, pulling her and Aiden toward the escape tunnel. The tunnel groaned beneath their feet as the station trembled violently. Mike felt the ground shift under the crushing weight of the gravity, the pressure growing harder with each passing second. The walls seemed to bend and sway, and the metallic hum of the facility's dying systems filled the air. Every step forward was a battle. The sounds of collapsing structures and waves of debris crashing around them amplified the sense of doom closing in. Mike pulled Lydia forward, his hand gripping her arm tightly as they moved through the narrow, waterlogged escape tunnel. Aiden was barely able to keep up. His breathing labored from the blast he'd taken earlier. His body battered. Eloise supported him, her face pale but determined. Ujamoem. She glanced over her shoulder every few moments, eyes wide with fear, as though expecting another creature to emerge from the depths at any moment. "Keep moving," Mike shouted, his voice hoarse and strained. They were so close now, but he could feel the station's core rapidly losing structural integrity. The pressure in the tunnel was unbearable, like the very air was being crushed out of his lungs. His exosuit was failing. The compensators were starting to sputter. "Mike!" Lydia gasped. She looked over at him, fear evident in her eyes. "It's going to collapse. We don't have much time." "I know," he replied, voice tight with concentration. "We're almost there, just a little further." The walls of the tunnel shook again, and the ground rumbled beneath them, sending a fresh wave of panic through the group. Another surge of gravity passed through, and Eloise stumbled, barely catching herself against the wall. Mike turned back to her, seeing her struggling under the weight. He rushed back, his arms snaking around her waist to steady her. "Stay close," Mike urged, half supporting her as they moved toward the shuttle bay. The sound of the station crumbling behind them made it clear that there wasn't much time before everything would come down around them. "We have to hurry," Lydia called, her voice sharp with urgency. She was already ahead, her focus completely on the escape pod. The emergency lights flickered as they reached the final door, which opened with a hiss, revealing the escape pods. The sight of the pods, their smooth, sleek design, was a small, blessed relief. The escape route they needed was within reach. Mike pushed forward, helping Eloise into the first pod. Lydia quickly followed, pausing just to look over her shoulder at Mike, eyes filled with both gratitude and an underlying fear she couldn't quite hide. Mike helped Aiden into the second pod before climbing in himself. The pod doors sealed shut behind them with a soft, mechanical hum. The gravity compensators flickered once more, and the pod engines roared to life. "System online, preparing for launch," the calm, automated voice in the pod's control system announced. Mike glanced at Lydia, who was now sitting beside him. Her face was streaked with dirt and exhaustion, but there was a fire in her eyes that hadn't been extinguished. "Are we safe?" she asked, her voice small but filled with hope. Her body was shaking slightly, though she tried to hide it. "For now," Mike replied. "We just need to make sure we're far enough from the blast radius." As the pod shot out of the station, leaving the chaos of Nereus behind, they both watched in silence as the station's remains began to implode, its massive framework crumbling into the dark ocean. The shock waves from the collapse rippled across the water, and the sound of the explosion resonated even through the pod's thick hull. Lydia's breath caught in her throat as the scene unfolded outside the viewport. Mike could see her lips tremble slightly, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if it was the weight of the explosion or something else. He leaned over, his voice quiet. "We made it. It's over." She nodded, but there was a far-off look in her eyes. "Is it, though?" she whispered, her gaze fixed on the wreckage. "So much has been lost. I thought we could make a difference here. I thought we could save Nereus." Mike didn't respond immediately. His mind was still processing the enormity of the mission's success. But as the seconds ticked by, he realized that Lydia wasn't just talking about the planet. He reached out, his hand gently touching hers. "We did the best we could," Mike said softly. "You did. Without you, none of this would have been possible." Lydia's eyes flicked up to meet his, her lips parting as though she wanted to say something. But before she could, a sudden tremor coursed through the pod. It lurched, and the lights flickered. They both braced themselves as the systems adjusted, fighting against the planet's residual gravity. "We're still not out of the woods yet," Mike muttered, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the pod's display. The emergency systems were still in the red, and there was no telling when the gravitational waves would hit again. Lydia's voice cut through the tension, soft but with a newfound resolve. "We'll make it. We have to." The pod broke through the atmosphere of Nereus, ascending into the relative calm of the outer layers of the planet's gravity field. The vastness of space stretched out before them, a stunning view of the galaxy lit up in specks of light. But even as they left the chaos of the planet's surface, Mike could feel the weight of what had happened pressing down on him. He sat silently beside Lydia, his eyes fixed on the stars. They had made it out, but the cost was heavy. Nereus had nearly been lost, and there were far too many questions left unanswered. Who had started the gravitational anomaly? What was the full extent of the Praxian rogue faction's involvement? And how many other planets were at risk of the same fate? But none of that mattered now. They had survived. As the pod sailed through the blackness, Lydia leaned back against the cushioned seat. Her eyes closed for a moment, her face softening. Mike noticed the exhaustion finally catching up with her. Her earlier strength, that unwavering focus, seemed to melt away as the adrenaline ebbed from her system. Mike cleared his throat. "You did good, Lydia. We did." She opened her eyes and met his gaze, a tired but grateful smile spreading across her face. "I couldn't have done it without you." They were silent for a moment, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that speaks volumes, the kind that acknowledges everything they had been through, the unsaid words of survival. The bond forged in the heat of battle. Lydia's hand brushed against his, the touch light but meaningful. Her eyes flickered to his, and in that moment, the tension between them was palpable. "You know, Mike, back on the station, when everything was falling apart, I thought I was going to lose everything," Lydia confessed, her voice soft, barely above a whisper. "But you kept pushing forward. You kept fighting. For us. For Nereus." Mike's heart beat faster as he turned to face her, the weight of her words sinking in. "I'm not going anywhere, not when it matters." Lydia's smile softened, and her eyes sparkled with something deeper now. "I'm glad, because I don't know what I would have done without you." Mike reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. His heart raced. It wasn't just the heat of the moment, it was something more. With the distance between them growing smaller, their lips met in a kiss, soft, tentative at first, as if neither of them was entirely sure. But it deepened quickly, a kiss born from shared survival, pain, and an unspoken promise. When they pulled away, their foreheads rested together, both of them breathing a little heavier than usual. "We've been through hell, haven't we?" Lydia murmured. Mike smiled faintly, his fingers brushing against her cheek. "We're not out of it yet, but we'll face whatever comes next together." Outside the pod, the stars shone brightly, a vast unknown stretching out before them. And as they soared away from the chaos of Nereus, they knew that this was just the beginning, not just for their mission, but for something much more personal. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to support our channel and stay tuned for more epic stories like this. Don't forget to leave a comment below with your thoughts on the story. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know where you're listening from too. We love hearing from fans all over the world.